The radio had gone quiet. Before I realized how wrong that was. Not static, not a drop channel, just nothing. Wind still moved the grass around my boots. The truck engine ticked. As it cooled, my breath sounded too loud inside my own ears. Too loud. I stood on the north cut, above the wash, where the Badlands flatten out toward the reservation fence line. There should have been coyotes by then. There were always coyotes. Dawn was still an hour out, and the moon had dropped behind the ridge. The land should have been alive with it. I keyed the MIC and said my call sign. I released it. Nothing came back. I checked the handset and tried again. Still nothing. That was the first wrong detail. Not a failure. A refusal. The tracks were in front of me. 6 sets. Human booted, different tread patterns. They came up out of the wash together and spread slightly as they climbed. Then they stopped. No turn. No backtrack. No disturbance past that line. Just ended. Like someone lifted them straight up. I remember thinking, I needed to mark the spot before the light changed. That was habit. Procedure before reaction. I dropped a pin on the handheld and took photos with my phone. The screen dimmed, even though the battery read full. That happens sometimes out there. Cold drains fast. Except it was not cold. I did not know yet who I was supposed to call first. That is something you are trained for. But in certain places, the order matters more than the call itself. I stood there longer than I should have, waiting for the land to correct me. My name is Jonathan Lone Wolf. I am a senior tribal ranger, assigned to Oglala Lakota Nation lands, in the Wanblee district. At the time of this incident, I had 16 years of service. My jurisdiction covered wildlife management, trespass enforcement, and search coordination on reservation and trust land boundaries. We were short-staffed that winter. We always were. The first time I saw tracks end like that, I was 19. It was my uncle's search. His name was Isaac Lone Wolf. Year 2003. He went missing south of Sheep Mountain after going out to check a fence line alone. He broke a rule we do not write down. Do not go alone into places that do not echo. We found his truck. We found his hat. We found his prints leading into a stand of juniper that should not have been there. They ended the same way. Clean. Like a lesson. I told myself this was different. 6 people do not vanish the same way an old man does. 6 people leave noise. 6 people leave mistakes. I walked the perimeter anyway. Clockwise. Slow. I counted my steps. Without meaning to. At 50 paces. The air felt heavier. Not pressure. Attention. I stopped. And waited. That is another rule. When the land notices you, you let it finish. The radio clicked once. Not a transmission. Just a sound like someone letting go of the button. I said my name again. Softer. I got nothing back. I flagged the location with tape from my kit. I used red, even though yellow was standard. Red shows up better against chalk rock, and it tells the elders something. Without saying it, my grandmother taught me that. She said the land reads color, the way we read tone. By the time the sun came up, I had convinced myself it was a border crossing gone wrong. Migrant traffic sometimes cut that way. People got disoriented. Panic made them scatter. It was not common, but it fit enough to keep me steady. The land does not mind steady. It minds careless. I drove back to the station and filed a preliminary report. Missing persons. Unknown count pending confirmation. Last known location North Wash. Possible exposure. I left out the silence. That comes later, if it comes at all. Dispatch finally came back online. Mid-morning. They said there had been a line issue. Wind damage somewhere south. I asked if any other units had radio trouble overnight. The pause on the other end was too long. Then they said no. By noon, we had names. Construction crew. Non-tribal. Contracted to survey a fiber route that cut too close to a restricted zone. That was the first complication. Infrastructure always brings pressure. Pressure brings shortcuts. Their supervisor wanted a helicopter. State wanted jurisdiction clarification. Tribal council wanted to know why they were there at all. I wanted boots on the ground that knew how to walk without pushing. I did not get what I wanted. We started the search. At 1400 hours, I briefed the team myself. I told them to stay in sight. I told them not to call out unless they heard a response. I told them if they heard someone they recognized, they were to stop and radio me. I did not explain why. You do not explain that. On a first day, one of the volunteers laughed and said that sounded like ghost stories. I corrected him without raising my voice. I said it sounded like safety protocol. He stopped smiling. By the second hour, the dogs refused to track. They sat and faced the ridgeline, with their ears flat. No growling, no fear, just refusal. Their handler tried to coax them with treats. One of the dogs whined, like it was being corrected for something it did not understand. We found a phone. At 15:10, screen cracked. No blood. Last video was a shaky pan of the Badlands, and a man saying he thought he heard someone behind him. The audio cut out at the word mom. That name matters. It always does. At 1600, the wind died again. Birds left the area. Even the insects went quiet. I called a halt. That was within my authority. I cited heat stress risk, even though the temperature was mild. Some of the team argued. One of the state officers asked me what I was really worried about. I told him I was worried about losing more people. We pulled back to the vehicles. I counted heads twice. That is when I noticed Ranger Eli Red Cloud was missing. He had 6 years on the job. 2 kids. He broke formation because he thought he heard crying. We found his tracks first. They ran. Then they slowed. Then they walked. Then they ended beside the others. I did not authorize the second search. I should have. That is what keeps me awake. I cited safety. I cited daylight. I cited jurisdiction. All true. All insufficient. That night, I went to my grandmother's house. She was 91 then, and still sharp. She listened, without interrupting. When I finished, she told me the land had been patient, longer than it should have been. She said the rules were being tested by people who did not know they were rules. She told me to remember that it does not chase. It waits. It lets you step into it on your own. I went back out before dawn, alone. That was another violation. Authority does not excuse grief. I stood at the line where the tracks ended and said Eli's name once. The land stayed silent. I did not say it again. By sunrise, the prints were gone. Wind had not moved. No weather, just absence. We closed the case. 2 weeks later, under exposure and presumed death. Infrastructure rerouted. A fence went up that no one crosses now, even though there is no sign. That explains why Eli's kids ask me sometimes where their dad went. I tell them he is working somewhere important. This is only the beginning of what followed. The rules changed after that, or maybe they just got clearer. The official boundary fence went up 3 months after. We closed the case. 8-foot chain link with barbed wire, canting inward, funded under emergency infrastructure protection. The paperwork listed erosion control and public safety. No mention of why. The route bent away from a straight line to avoid a shallow draw. That did not show up on satellite imagery anymore. I was present for the installation. I did not supervise directly. I stayed in my truck on the ridge and watched. The workers complained about the silence. One of them asked me why his radio kept cutting out when he faced north. I told him it was line of sight interference. That answer satisfied him enough to keep working. We started logging radio outages as equipment anomalies. That was a mistake. When something repeats, You documented his pattern, not failure. I corrected that. After the third report. From then on, we logged silence. As an environmental condition, it still took longer than it should have for administration to accept the category. The land stayed quiet. 4 weeks. No missing persons. No animal die-offs. No ended tracks. That was the first. False stabilization. The council praised our response. The state pulled their people. Funding tapered. The fence did its job. On paper, Eli Red Cloud's locker stayed untouched. His wife asked me when it would be cleared. I told her we were holding his effects, pending final status. That was not true. I could not bring myself to hand over the radio. It still smelled like sage and oil. It still worked everywhere, except north of the wash. I began adjusting patrol routes without issuing new directives. You learn how to do that quietly. You cite road conditions. You cite wildlife movement. You never cite instinct, even when instinct is what keeps people alive. I stopped sending single units into the Badlands. I paired rookies with elders who knew how to walk slow. I told them stories that sounded like safety briefings. Rule 1 was always spacing. Stay within sight, not within earshot. Sight matters. Rule 2 was names. Do not answer if you hear your name spoken from outside the group. Rule 3 was silence. If the land goes quiet, you do not fill it. Rule 4 was incomplete. I did not know it was incomplete at the time. Do not cross fresh tracks. That end. I thought that meant avoid the line. I did not understand. It meant avoid the absence. The first violation, after the fence, was mine. I responded to a call about cattle found dead near the restricted zone. No injury, no blood, just collapsed, like they lay down and did not get back up. Ranchers get loud about cattle. I went alone because it was supposed to be a quick assessment. The tracks were there again. 2 sets this time. Barefoot. That detail mattered. They came out of the wash and walked side by side until they did not. I stepped closer than I should have. I crossed the line without realizing it because there was no line anymore, just space. I lost 20 minutes. That is what my watch said. I did not feel it pass. When I came back to myself, I was standing with my boots half buried in chalk dust and my radio in my hand. It was transmitting, not static, a voice. It sounded like my mother. She died when I was 12. It said my Lakota name, the way only she said it. Soft, tired, asking why I did not come. When she called, I did not respond. That was not courage. That was training. My grandmother's voice was louder in my head than the one in my ear. Do not answer what already knows you. The transmission stopped. When I stepped back, I marked the location and left. I did not tell anyone about the voice. That silence cost more later. 2 days after that, we lost livestock across 3 properties, all within a mile of the fence, all without injury. The council demanded answers. The elders asked me if the land was being respected. Those are different questions. We set up night patrols. That was another mistake. Light makes people brave. Brave makes people careless. We lost a deputy from the county sheriff's office on the 3rd night. His name was Mark Jensen. He was not supposed to be there. He crossed into our jurisdiction, chasing what he thought was a trespasser. He radioed in that he had eyes on a male subject walking barefoot through cactus without injury. His last transmission was him saying, the subject turned around and smiled like he knew him. The audio cut out. His tracks ended where the others did. The county called it a pursuit gone wrong. They blamed terrain. They blamed dehydration. They blamed us quietly. I attended his funeral in uniform. His wife asked me if he suffered. I told her no. That was a lie. The truth would not have helped. After that, We rewrote the rules formally. I drafted the document myself. It was labeled Environmental Hazard Response Addendum. It listed silence as a trigger. It listed ended tracks as a no-cross zone. It listed voice imitation as a known risk factor. It did not list what to do if you believe the voice belongs to someone you love. There are no words that make that safer. The entity never showed itself. I know that word sounds wrong. Entity implies intention. It is older than that. It enforces boundaries the way gravity does. You do not argue with gravity. You learn how to fall. The elders came to the station one evening without calling ahead. That alone told me something had shifted. They sat in the briefing room and listened while I explained what we had logged. They nodded when I talked about silence. They nodded when I talked about missing time. They did not nod when I talked about containment. One of them told me, the land does not belong to us, and never did. Another told me, fences confuse it. Another told me, voices are how it reminds you who you are. None of them contradicted each other. My grandmother died that winter. Natural causes. Peaceful. I stayed with her. The last night, she took my hand and told me to stop trying to make rules for something that already has them. She told me my job was to watch and to teach watching. The week after her burial, we lost a teenager, non-tribal. He cut through the restricted zone to save time. Walking home, his phone recorded him calling out to his sister. The audio shows him stopping. There is a long stretch of nothing, then a sound, like wind through grass. Though there was no wind, his parents wanted answers. The council wanted quiet. The state wanted a press release. I wanted to burn the fence down and let the land breathe. I did none of those things. We expanded the restricted zone. We put up signs that say no trespassing. We added cameras that do not record anything when pointed north. We told ourselves this was progress. It was not. The tracks came back thicker, overlapping, human and not. Some barefoot, some booted, some too long to make sense. They all ended. I started sleeping at the station. Home felt too loud, too full of echoes. My wife said my name once, in the night, and I flinched. That hurt her more than any truth I could have told. There was a meeting with federal oversight in spring. They asked about liability. They asked about environmental impact. They asked why our reports used words like refusal and attention. I adjusted the language. I said equipment malfunction. I said wildlife behavior. I said cultural sensitivity. They nodded and took notes and left. After they left, the radio went quiet for an hour across the entire district, not just north, everywhere. We did not lose anyone that day because we did not move. That was when I understood the limitation. It cannot cross where its silence is broken by collective attention. One person alone is nothing. Many people watching together creates a boundary it will not step into. That is the only thing we have. We do not advertise it. Crowds bring other problems. We rely on routine, on presence, on watching, without calling out. This part of the land is patient. It waits. It does not chase. It enforces. I am still here because I learned to stop stepping forward. The first time, the watching failed. It did not fail loudly. It failed through scheduling. We had settled into a rhythm by then. 2 units on opposite ridges, overlapping sight lines, radios on but quiet. No chatter. We treated silence like weather, something you account for without trying to change. That winter, funding delays pushed us into split shifts. Overtime approvals stalled. At the council level, federal reimbursement lagged behind paperwork. None of that felt dangerous. It felt familiar. Administrative drag is a constant. You learn to work around it. On a Tuesday, in late February, the overlap window disappeared. Unit 3 cleared early to escort a snowplow off reservation land. Unit 4 was late coming on because the ranger had to drop his daughter at school after the bus route was cut. That left a 40-minute gap where only one set of eyes covered the North Wash. That ranger was Aaron Toolbay. He had 3 years on the job. Smart, careful. He followed the rules exactly as written. That mattered later. At 0730, I checked the board and saw the gap. I considered calling him back. I did not. I told myself the land had been quiet 4 months. I told myself one person watching was still watching. At 0755, his radio keyed once. No voice, no static, just a click. I drove out immediately. I broke another rule. By doing so, do not rush towards silence. I justified it as command presence. I told dispatch to keep the channel open and log everything. When I reached the ridge, Aaron's truck was still idling. Door open, footprints leading away. He had followed them. 2 sets this time. One his, one barefoot, parallel, measured. No sign of struggle. They ended where the ground dipped, toward the old wash line. I did not cross. That was the only thing I did right. That morning, I called his name once. Just once. I waited. Nothing answered. Not even the echo you expect. Off chalk stone. It was like sound. Slid off the space and fell somewhere else. We recovered Aaron 3 days later. That sentence is inaccurate. We recovered his body. He was found south of the restricted zone, 30 miles from where he went missing. No injuries, no exposure signs. His watch had stopped at 0758. His boots were clean. The medical examiner ruled it sudden cardiac event, stress-induced. The paperwork closed clean, too clean. His daughter was 6. She asked me why her dad did not come home when he said he would. I told her, sometimes grown-ups have jobs that keep them longer than they expect. I hate myself for how easy that sentence came. After Aaron, the elders stopped coming to the station. That absence mattered more than any presence. When elders withdraw, it means they have accepted something you have not. The land changed subtly. After that, not louder, heavier. Birds avoided entire corridors. Deer skirted the fence line and refused to cross, even where it was broken. We logged increased animal movement on the perimeter and none inside. It was like a held breath. The voices came more frequently, not broadcast, not constant, personal. Rangers reported hearing their spouses calling from ridgelines. Dispatchers heard children crying through dead headsets. One maintenance worker swore he heard his father laughing behind him while he replaced a camera battery. We instituted Rule 5. Verbally, never written. If you hear a voice you recognize, you ground yourself in physical detail. Count stones, name plants, say the date out loud. Do not respond. Do not follow. Rule 5 caused harm when followed correctly. In March, we lost Maria 2 dogs. She was logistics, not field. She coordinated supplies and vehicle maintenance. She knew the rules because she heard them every day. She did not need to be near the restricted zone to be affected. She was alone in the motor pool, inventorying radios, when she heard her son call her. He was supposed to be at school. The voice sounded panicked, hurt. She followed Rule 5. She did not answer. She did not follow. She counted shelving units. She named tools. She said the date. She collapsed from an aneurysm. 15 minutes later, the doctor said stress. The council said tragedy. I said nothing. Her son had never called. That was when it became clear. The rules were not protection. They were containment. They limited spread. They did not save individuals. I started having dreams. Of the wash. Not nightmares. Observations. Standing at the edge. Watching footprints appear. And disappear. Without sound. Always 6 sets. Sometimes more. Never fewer. I began recording personal notes. Outside official logs. Dates. Times. Patterns. I did not share them. I was afraid. Of what would happen. If too many people knew. The same details. At once. Collective attention. Can be a boundary. It can also be an invitation. In April. Infrastructure returned. A new survey crew arrived. With updated permits. Fiber reroute approved. The fence was not enough. They needed underground access. Trenching equipment. Ground disturbance. I argued against it. I cited risk. I cited unresolved fatalities. I cited cultural impact. The state cited contracts. The federal liaison cited national priority. The council cited funding. I was ordered to supervise. We established a work window. Midday only. No early morning. No dusk. No night. 2 ranger units. On site at all times. Observers on the ridges. Radios tested every hour. The first day went smoothly. The land stayed quiet. Too quiet. The second day, one of the workers found an old marker stone, half buried, near the trench line. He picked it up to look at it. I told him to put it back. He asked why. I told him it was not his. He laughed and handed it to another worker. That worker dropped it when his radio crackled with a voice saying his name. The voice was his own. We shut the site down. Immediately, the stone was replaced. The trench filled. The crew left angry. The permit stayed active. That night, the fence alarms triggered. For the first time, motion sensors along the north line lit up in sequence, not moving toward or away, just appearing, ending, appearing again. Farther down, cameras recorded nothing. Sound monitors picked up silence. Absolute. Like the absence of data itself. I stood on the ridge with 2 other rangers and watched the lights trip. None of us spoke. I felt the land, noticing us noticing it. That is a dangerous loop. One of the rangers whispered my name. He said he thought he saw someone standing beyond the fence, just standing, barefoot, watching back. I told him not to look directly, peripheral only. I told him to anchor his feet and breathe. The figure did not move. It did not approach. It did not retreat. After a minute, it was not there anymore. Not vanished. Just not present. We lost power. Across the district. For 12 minutes. No storm. No fault logged. When it came back, all the clocks in the station were off by the same amount. The elders returned. The next morning, they did not sit. They stood in the doorway and told me the land was tired of being tested. They told me the old agreements were being broken by people who never made them. They told me my job was no longer to manage. It was to bear witness. One of them said the land had chosen its watchers before we ever named ourselves rangers, that our uniforms did not matter. Our attention did. I asked them how to stop it. They told me stopping was not part of the agreement. That night, my wife asked me if I was hearing things. I told her no. That was another lie. She said I had started saying our children's names in my sleep, like I was counting them. In May, we lost the false stabilization entirely. 3 hikers went missing in one weekend. All ignored posted signs. All phones recorded voices, calling them by name. One phone captured a phrase we had not heard before. Come closer. You are already inside. Search and rescue. Wanted full deployment. Media sniffed around. I was told to minimize exposure, delay, contain. We deployed watches instead of searches. That decision cost lives. I know that. It also prevented more. One of the hikers was my cousin's son. I stood at the edge of the wash and heard him calling me, Uncle. I heard him say he was cold, that he could see me. I did not answer. That choice will never stop being mine. We found his backpack. A week later, tracks leading away, ending. The land does not keep what crosses willingly. It returns what remains. By the end of spring, the restricted zone doubled. The fence bent again. Maps updated. Satellite imagery blurred. In that corridor, we logged it as resolution error. I stopped trying to correct the reports. I let the language degrade. Ambiguity became a tool. I am still watching. The land is still waiting. And now, it knows how we schedule. Summer did not bring relief. It brought access. The Badlands dry out. In summer, roads that are impassable. In winter open up. Trails appear. Where water once cut them away. People wander farther, because the land looks forgiving. When it is warm, that is when we lose the most. By June, the restricted zone was a shape no one could explain. It was not circular. It was not linear. It bent around features that no longer showed on maps. Old washes, stone clusters, places elders named, but surveyors never logged. We staffed it anyway. We created watch sectors. That was the official term. It sounded neutral. It sounded controlled. Each sector had assigned eyes, scheduled overlaps, mandatory rest rotations. We learned the hard way that exhaustion makes people sloppy. With names, Rule 6 came from a mistake I made myself. Do not speak the names of the missing. While on watch, memory draws attention. Attention draws response. We honor them elsewhere. That rule nearly cost me my marriage. My wife, Anna, is not tribal. She married into this land with respect, but not inheritance. She believed in safety procedures, the way most people do. She believed rules were meant to solve things. She asked me one night why I stopped saying Eli's name. She asked me why I stopped saying Aaron's. She asked me why I flinched when our son called me from another room. I told her I was tired. I told her the job was heavy. I did not tell her the land listens. The first direct breach that summer came from a well-meaning place. Youth outreach. The council approved a guided hike program for tribal teenagers. Cultural reconnect ion. Supervised. Safe routes only. The elders were divided. Some said exposure teaches respect. Some said respect comes from distance. I was assigned oversight. We planned the route carefully. South Ridge only. No wash crossings. No restricted markers visible. We briefed the kids on staying together, on silence, on not wondering. We did not explain why. You cannot ask teenagers to be afraid of something you refuse to name. Halfway through the hike, the cicadas stopped. That should have ended it. I should have turned us around immediately. Instead, I hesitated. I weighed panic versus protocol. I chose protocol. One of the kids asked why it got so quiet. I said, it happens sometimes. That was true. It was also insufficient. Another kid laughed and said it felt like being underwater. That description spread unease through the group. I ordered a break. Water, shade, grounding. That was when one of the girls said she heard her grandmother singing. Her grandmother had died the year before. I told her not to respond. I told everyone to stay where they were and look at me. I raised my voice just enough to anchor attention. I counted heads. She stepped away. Anyway, not running. walking, calm, like she knew where she was going. I went after her. Without thinking, I grabbed her arm. The moment my hand closed around her wrist, the sound came back, all at once. Birds, insects, wind. Too much. She screamed then. Not from fear, from confusion. Like waking up. Some way unfamiliar. We got out. Without losing anyone. That is the official outcome. The girl did not speak. For 2 days after. When she did, she asked why her grandmother sounded disappointed. The elders said the land had tested the next generation. That is not comforting. It is instructional. After that, youth programs were suspended. I took the blame. Publicly. That was expected. What was not expected was the way the land reacted. It withdrew again. No voices. No tracks. No silence. Heavier than normal. Just absence. False stabilization. Returned stronger than before. The council praised our restraint. The state commended our risk management. The media lost interest. Funding stabilized. I should have known better. The first sign was the animals. We found birds dead along the fence line. No injury. No scavenging. Just fallen. Deer carcasses appeared. Weeks later, same condition. It was not disease. It was not poison. The land was clearing space. Then the voices returned. Altered. They stopped calling names. They started asking questions. Where are you? Why did you stop coming? Do you remember? Rangers reported hearing conversations they could not quite follow. Like listening through a wall. Familiar cadences. Wrong context. One of them, Luke Ironshell, broke Rule 6. He said Aaron's name out loud during a watch shift. He said it like a challenge, like defiance. The ground responded, not violently, precisely. A shallow sink opened beneath his feet. Not enough to trap him, enough to make him stumble and scrape his hand. He bled. Blood matters. We pulled him off watch permanently. He protested. He said he was fine. I said the land disagreed. That was when I started to understand the cost of leadership. In this place, you do not protect people by telling them the truth. You protect them by limiting what they are allowed to know. In August, federal oversight returned with environmental scientists. They brought sensors, ground-penetrating radar, audio arrays. They wanted data. I allowed it. Under conditions. No digging. No overnight equipment. No solo work. Observers present. The sensors recorded nothing. The radar showed inconsistencies. Cavities, where there should be none. Density shifts that did not align with geology. The scientists argued with each other. That argument created noise. The land responded with silence, so complete, it made people nauseous. One of the scientists vomited and fainted. Another said he felt like he was being stared at from behind his own eyes. They packed up early. The report cited inconclusive findings. The funding stayed. That night, I dreamed of my grandmother standing at the fence line. She did not speak. She just watched me, watching the land. Her disappointment was heavier than any voice. Anna told me the next morning that she wanted me to take leave. She said the kids were scared of my silences. She said I was not present, even when I was home. I told her I could not leave. I told her there was no one else who knew the rules well enough. She asked me if that was true, or if that was just something I told myself, so I did not have to choose. I did not answer. The next loss was personal. My brother, Michael, came to visit from Rapid City. He had not been back to the reservation in years. He wanted closure. He wanted to see where our uncle went missing. I told him no. I told him. It was restricted. He went anyway. He did not tell me. He borrowed a truck from a cousin and drove out early one morning. He crossed the fence where someone had cut it. Weeks earlier, we found the truck abandoned near the wash. Door open, keys inside. His phone recorded a video of him walking and talking to someone off camera. He sounded calm, curious. He said my name. I heard that recording once. I will never hear it again. His tracks ended with the others. Anna screamed when I told her. Not at me. At the house. At the land. At everything. She took the kids and left. That night, she said she could not live somewhere that listened to grief. I do not blame her. After Michael, the elders came to me privately. They said the land was no longer satisfied with passive watching. They said boundaries require acknowledgement. They told me I needed to stay, not as a ranger, as a witness. They said some people are noticed early and never stop being noticed. They said my family history marked me, that my uncle's disappearance was not a warning. It was a selection. I asked them why the land imitates voices. They said, because voices are how we cross distances. Without moving, the land does not move. It makes us come to it. I am alone now, more often than not. I sleep at the station, or in my truck, near the ridge. I do not say names. I do not answer questions that come from nowhere. The restricted zone has stopped expanding. That does not mean it is stable. It means it is waiting for the next adjustment, and it knows. I'm still watching. By September, the waiting had weight. It pressed down on routines, on paperwork, on sleep. The land did not announce escalation. It let us fill the space. Ourselves. Anna and the kids stayed with her sister in Nebraska. She called less often as weeks passed. When she did, she spoke carefully, like someone navigating a room full of fragile objects. I answered in the same tone. We both avoided names. The house felt wrong, without noise. Even the refrigerator hum sounded intrusive. I stopped going home altogether when I found myself standing in the hallway one night, listening for footsteps that were not there. The station became my anchor. Fluorescent lights, coffee that tasted burnt, radios that clicked and stayed quiet. I slept in short blocks and dreamed in fragments. Administration tried to rotate me out. That was their solution. Burnout mitigation, liability reduction. They said I had done enough. I refused. I cited continuity of operations. I cited cultural liaison necessity. I cited active hazard familiarity. All true, all incomplete. They let it go because no one else volunteered. The first sign that the land was shifting again came from the cameras. Not failure, behavior. Cameras facing the restricted zone began recording longer stretches of nothing. Not black, not static, just the same frame. Repeating, with no compression drift, no pixel noise, as if time itself stalled within that view. When motion did register, it was delayed. A figure would appear in one frame, already mid-step, then be gone. The next, no entry, no exit. We logged it as frame drop anomaly. I told the techs not to fix it. Rule 7 came quietly. If technology behaves too perfectly, disengage it. Precision attracts attention. Imprecision passes unnoticed. That rule saved lives later. The next incident involved water. A seasonal spring re-emerged inside the restricted zone. After decades dry, clay, cold, flowing steadily. That alone drew interest. Springs matter here. They always have. A rancher's cattle broke through the fence one night and followed the sound. We found them, clustered around the spring. At dawn, alive, calm, drinking. Their tracks told the story. They had crossed, ended prints, without hesitation. Animals do not recognize absence as danger. They recognize only threat. We herded them back, slowly. No voices, no rushing. The land allowed it. That mattered. After that, people started asking questions about the spring. Rumors spread. Social media posts showed up with coordinates blurred, but recognizable. Someone wrote that the land was healing. That narrative is dangerous. I requested temporary closure of adjacent access roads. The council approved, reluctantly. Too many eyes already pointed that way. The land responded by changing the soundscape. Wind shifted direction unpredictably. Sound carried farther in some directions, and not at all in others. You could hear a truck door slam miles away, but not a person standing 10 feet from you. That kind of distortion breaks trust between people. You start doubting your senses. Doubt leads to calling out. We lost Ranger Luke Ironshell that way. He was on perimeter watch near the spring. He reported hearing footsteps behind him. He turned. Nothing. He reported again, voice tense. I told him to anchor, to breathe, to stay facing forward. He said he heard me telling him to turn around. I was not on the channel. He turned. Anyway, his radio captured one final sound. Not a scream, not words. A sharp intake of breath, like surprise. His body was never recovered. His tracks ended, facing away from the restricted zone. That detail matters. Orientation matters. After Luke, I ordered a full stand down. Full 48 hours. No patrols. No watches. No presence. That went against everything we had learned. Collective attention holds the boundary. Absence invites expansion. But attention also creates friction. Too much friction draws response. The elders supported the stand down. They said the land needed to remember itself. Without us in the way, those 2 days were the longest of my life. Phones rang constantly. Ranchers complained. Council members argued. State officials threatened intervention. I said no to all of it. Nothing happened. No voices. No tracks. No silence. Heavier than usual. On the 3rd day, I resumed limited watch. Fewer people. Wider spacing. No fixed schedules. Rule 8 emerged from that period. Do not be predictable. The land learns patterns faster than we do. October brought cold nights and shorter days. Darkness changes behavior. People hurry. Hurrying breaks rules. A volunteer fire crew responded to a brush flare near the southern edge of the zone. Unauthorized. Good intentions. They cut across a marked no-entry corridor to save time. We arrived too late to stop them. The fire burned itself out. Quickly. Too quickly. No wind. No fuel explanation. The ground around it was blackened. In a perfect circle. 2 firefighters reported hearing a child laughing while they worked. One followed the sound for several steps before his captain grabbed him. That captain later told me the laughter sounded like it came from underground. We lost no one that night. That does not mean there was no cost. One of the firefighters developed severe insomnia. Another quit the department. The captain asked me if the land was angry. I told him the land does not get angry. It enforces. Mid-October, Anna came back. Alone. She said she needed to see me. She said the kids were better not being here. She said She needed answers, even if they scared her. We sat at the kitchen table. I told her some of the truth, enough to explain my silences, not enough to end the marriage completely. She asked me if Michael was gone, or if he was still somewhere, calling my name. I told her I did not know. That was the most honest thing I had said in months. She stayed 2 nights. On the second night, she woke me up and asked if I was outside. I was in bed beside her. She said she heard my boots on the porch. Slow, familiar, waiting. I did not go look. She left. The next morning, before dawn, she said she loved me. She said love was not enough to compete with land that listens. I did not argue. The spring dried up. The week after that, no gradual taper, just gone. The ground cracked where it had flowed. Birds stopped coming. The cattle avoided the area entirely. That absence felt deliberate. The elders came again and told me the land had withdrawn its offering. They said boundaries had been reasserted. They also told me this phase would not last. In November, the first snow came early. It covered tracks quickly. That should have reduced incidents. It did not. Tracks began appearing on top of snow without breaking the surface. Imprints without displacement, like shadows pressed into white. Those tracks ended too. We lost a survey drone when it crossed the zone. No signal loss, no crash telemetry, just vanished from the feed. Its last frame showed the ridge from above. 6 dark shapes, visible only as absences in the snow. That number, again, I started to realize the land was not just enforcing boundaries. It was counting watches, counting violations, counting attention. Rule 9. Formed reluctantly. Never acknowledge patterns allowed. Naming patterns solidifies them. I broke that rule the night I said the number 6. In a briefing, the lights flickered, radios clicked. One ranger vomited without warning. I ended the briefing immediately. December approached with pressure from every side. Budget meetings, annual reports, calls for transparency. I wrote carefully. I used language like anomaly and precaution, an ongoing assessment. I did not use words like loss. The final incident of the year came quietly. A maintenance worker named Henry was clearing snow from the station roof. He slipped and fell. Minor injury, head impact. He was conscious when we brought him inside. As we waited for the ambulance, he grabbed my arm and asked me why his wife was calling him from the radio. There was no radio on. He said she sounded upset. He said she told him to come outside and help her. He died in the ambulance from a brain bleed. The medic said it was unavoidable. I stood in the bay afterward and listened to the quiet, not heavy, not absolute, just present. The land was not escalating. It was consolidating. I realized then that containment was no longer about holding a line. It was about deciding who stays to watch it. I am still here. That matters more than I want it to. The year turned without ceremony. January does that here. No fireworks, no crowds, just colder nights and longer stretches where the land holds everything close. I stopped marking time by dates. I marked it by incidents, by absences, by how often the radios stayed quiet when they should not have. The council approved a permanent watch program. That winter, they did not call it that. They called it a Land Interface Safety Unit. Acronyms help people sleep. The mandate was limited. Observation Deterrence. Coordination. No enforcement. No recovery. I was placed in charge. That title came with a quiet understanding. I would not be rotated out again. There would be no promotion path. No lateral transfer. This was where I would remain until something changed, or until I did. We adjusted staffing models. Fewer people, longer tenures. Volunteers stopped being accepted entirely. You cannot train someone quickly enough to survive this place. Familiarity matters more than skill. Rule 10. Emerge from loss. Never bring someone new to the edge without a reason that outweighs their life. That rule has no clean application. In February, a snowmobiler went missing along the northern ridge. Non-tribal, out of bounds, ignored signage. His GPS track showed him stopping repeatedly, like he was unsure of direction. Then nothing. His wife camped at the station, demanding action. Media followed. State agencies called. I deployed watches, not searches. That distinction is difficult to explain to people who believe effort equals care. We found his snowmobile, buried under drift, upright, keys in ignition, engine cold. His helmet lay beside it. Tracks led away. On foot. They ended. His wife asked me if he was alive. I told her I did not know. She asked me if I was doing everything I could. I told her I was doing everything I was allowed. That answer haunted me longer than any voice. The land responded to that incident with something new. It began returning things, not people, objects. A glove found miles from where it was lost. A radio placed carefully on the hood of a patrol truck. Overnight, a backpack left just inside the fence line, unzipped, contents intact, no tracks leading to them, no signs of how they arrived. It was not generosity, it was communication. The elders interpreted it as acknowledgement. The land recognized the watching. It was showing what it chose not to keep. That interpretation did not bring comfort, because it meant the land was choosing. March brought thaw, and with it, memory. Old ground re-emerged. Old markers became visible again. Stones half buried, decades earlier, pushed up through mud, like they were breathing. One of those stones appeared beside the station entrance. Overnight, it was not there. When I locked up, it was there. When I opened, no one admitted moving it. I left it where it was. Rule 11 became personal. Do not remove what arrives without tracks. That stone stayed for weeks. People walked around it without comment. Visitors avoided it instinctively. No one touched it. When it disappeared, one morning, no one asked where it went. That spring, I was called into a closed meeting with federal representatives, higher level than before. Quiet suits, careful language. They asked if we believed the phenomenon could expand beyond the current zone. I said yes. They asked if we believed it could be weaponized. I said no. They asked why. I said, because it does not move. It makes you come to it. That limits usefulness. They asked if relocation was possible. I said the land was already where it wanted to be. They took notes and ended the meeting early. 2 weeks later, satellite imagery access for our district was restricted, not blocked, delayed. Updates came days late instead of hours. Information friction is another kind of boundary. The land did not react to that change. It had already adapted. In April, we lost the first watcher without ended tracks. Her name was Denise Crow Feather. 12 years service. Steady, quiet. She followed rules like they were prayers. She was on ridge watch at midday. Clear weather. full visibility, overlapping sight lines. Her radio clicked once, then again, then nothing. We found her, sitting on a rock, facing away from the restricted zone, eyes open, breathing shallow, alive. She did not respond to voice or touch. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon, not north, west. At the hospital, doctors ran scans. No stroke, no injury, no explanation. When she finally spoke, 3 days later, she said she had been watching something. Watch something else. She said the land was not alone. That statement changed everything. The elders were divided. Some said she misinterpreted a vision. Some said the land has neighbors we do not acknowledge. I asked her what she meant. She said the land waits because something else does not. She never returned to duty. She moved away with her family. She does not answer my calls. After Denise, the land grew more precise. Voices stopped imitating loved ones. They began imitating authority. Dispatchers heard supervisors issuing false orders. Rangers heard my voice, telling them to reposition. Maintenance heard clearance instructions. Rule 12 became urgent. Verify every instruction, visually, or with a second source. Do not trust familiarity. That rule saved Ranger Thomas Black Elk when he refused an order to cross the wash because he could not see me. When the voice spoke, the voice corrected him. It said my name. It said his evaluation depended on compliance. He did not move. The voice stopped. The land punished. That refusal later. A fence post collapsed near his home that night, injuring his dog. No wind, no rot, just failure. That was the first time the land responded. Indirectly, I started to see the shape of it then. It enforces boundaries, but it also tests adaptation. It applies pressure where it will teach the most. By May, the watch program was no longer enough. The elders proposed a permanent presence, not patrols, not shifts, residency, someone to live at the edge, continuously, to maintain attention, without movement, to be a fixed point. They did not say my name. They did not have to. I resisted. I argued liability, mental health, family separation. They listened politely. Then they told me about the old watches. Not stories, names, roles, quiet positions, passed down, without documentation. My uncle's name was among them. That reframed everything. His disappearance was not a failure. It was a transition, without preparation. I agreed to a trial. We established a small outpost near the ridge. No power, no running water, minimal tech, a radio that stays on, but is rarely used. I moved in at the end of May. The first night was unbearable, not from fear, from awareness. The land felt closer, not aggressive, present, like standing near someone who knows your history better than you do. I did not sleep. On the second night, I heard my uncle speak my name once, not from outside, from memory. I did not answer. On the third night, the voices stopped entirely. Not silence, normal sound, wind, insects, distant traffic. For the first time in years, the land felt balanced. That did not last, because watches do not just watch the land. They watch what comes next. The balance broke quietly. It always does. By June, the outpost had become routine. That word feels dangerous to use here, but it matters. Routine dulls fear. It sharpens attention. I learned which sounds belonged to the land and which belonged to me. I learned how the wind moved differently at night. I learned when not to look. I did not hear voices anymore, not names, not commands. That absence Felt like trust. I logged observations. Twice a day. Weather. Wildlife movement. Radio integrity. Personal condition. I kept my language flat. I avoided interpretation. That restraint mattered. The first indication that something else was pressing came from outside my watch. A neighboring district reported radio interference along a completely different ridgeline. Similar pattern. Sudden silence. Delayed signals. Ended transmissions. Without error flags. They asked if we had experienced anything like it. I said yes. I did not explain further. Within a week, 2 more districts reported the same. Non-contiguous. Spread out. No clear line between them. The land here was not expanding. Something else was learning. That possibility sat heavy in my chest. The elders came to the outpost at dusk. That alone told me the trial was ending. They stood at a respectful distance and waited for me to acknowledge them. Protocol matters, even when the ground itself is listening. They asked me what I had noticed. I told them the land was quieter when watched continuously. I told them the voices stopped. I told them the rules held when respected. They asked me what frightened me. I told them the silence was becoming familiar. Elsewhere, they did not argue. They said the land I watched was not unique. It was simply older in how it enforced its boundaries. They said other places had learned different methods. Some louder, some faster, some less patient. They said attention attracts attention. That is the cost of watching. In July, the first direct request came from outside agencies. A classified memo, redacted heavily, language stripped of culture and history. It asked whether the phenomenon could be observed safely for replication. That word ended any cooperation. I responded formally. I cited fatalities, psychological harm, unpredictable outcomes. I recommended distance and respect. The reply thanked me for my perspective and said the matter would proceed, with or without my input. That night, the land reacted, for the first time since I moved into the outpost, not with voices, with memory. I dreamed of every loss, in sequence. My uncle, Eli, Aaron, Maria, Luke, Michael, faces I had buried, under procedure and language. They did not speak. They stood where their tracks ended and watched me. I woke with my hands bleeding, fingernails torn. I had been gripping the stone marker beside the outpost without realizing it. The next morning, the stone was gone. In its place was a shallow depression, perfectly shaped, like something had been set there for a long time and recently lifted. I understood then that the land was not reassured by my presence. It was reminded. By August, reports of ended tracks appeared in a national park, 3 states away. Different terrain, different culture, same absence. I was asked to consult remotely. I declined. Distance is protection. Knowledge travels faster than people. Anna called me that month. First time in weeks. She said our youngest had asked when I was coming home. I told her I did not know. She asked if the land was winning. I told her the land does not compete. That was not the answer she wanted. It was the only one I had. The outpost began to feel less like a boundary and more like a signal. I noticed aircraft adjusting flight paths slightly to avoid the airspace overhead. No official notice, just habit forming. Pilots trust instincts, even when they do not admit it. Migratory birds altered routes. They did not cross above me. They bent around. Animals respected the line, without knowing why. People did not. A group of independent researchers arrived unannounced. One afternoon, they bypassed roadblocks. They claimed academic freedom. They carried equipment I did not recognize. I met them at the perimeter. I told them to leave. They asked what authority I had. I told them the land did not require credentials. They laughed. One of them stepped past me. The ground did not open. There was no drama. His foot simply did not come down. He froze mid-step, balanced impossibly. He could not move, forward or back. His companions shouted, reached for him. I told them not to touch him. They did not listen. The moment their hands closed around his arm, all three vanished. No sound, no displacement, just absence. The land did not keep them. Their equipment appeared the next morning, stacked neatly beside the access road. Clean, powered down. That incident never made it to the news. Jurisdictional confusion buried it. Paperwork consumed it. I documented it. Anyway, after that, the elders returned and told me the watching role had changed. I was no longer just a witness. I was a reference point. Other places were beginning to align to this one, not physically, procedurally. The rules I had learned were being discovered elsewhere through loss. That spread would continue, with or without coordination. The elders asked me if I was willing to remain, not indefinitely, continuously. They said, leaving now would be like removing a keystone. The land would not chase me. It would simply rebalance in ways no one could predict. I thought of Anna, of my children, of the way voices used love as leverage. I thought of my uncle, standing at the edge, without knowing why. I said yes. The outpost was reinforced quietly, not with walls, with absence of intrusion. Maps stopped showing it clearly. Access roads degraded, without maintenance. Official documentation misfiled it into irrelevance. I became harder to reach. That was intentional. By early fall, the other districts stopped calling. Either they learned their own rules, or they stopped asking questions that had answers. The land, hey, remained stable. Stable does not mean safe. It means contained. I do not know how long I can do this. Watching erodes you. Slowly, you measure your life in what does not happen. I'm still hey, because the alternative costs more than I am willing to pay. The land knows this. That is why it lets me stay. I am recording this at the end of another winter. Snow covers the ridge. Again, it smooths everything into shapes that look harmless if you do not know how to read them. I have learned how to read what is missing. The outpost still stands, if you can call it standing. Wood, stone, a roof that creaks in the wind. No signage, no lights visible. From a distance, people who do not know where it is will not find it. People who know do not come. That is by design. The role has settled into something closer to permanence than duty. I do not patrol. I do not intervene. I observe, and I remain. Presence, without movement. Attention, without invitation. The land responds to that, not with gratitude, with equilibrium. There have been fewer incidents this year that would look like success in a report. It is not. It is adaptation. The tracks still appear, sometimes 6, sometimes more, sometimes fewer. They end the same way. Clean, absolute. I no longer photograph them. Documentation is not always neutral. The voices have not returned in the way they once did. They do not call names. They do not ask questions. They remind, at night, when the wind is low and the stars are sharp. I feel memory move across the ground, like weather, not mine alone, accumulated. Lead, the land remembers, everyone who crossed it, believing it would behave like a place, instead of a boundary. That distinction matters. I have not spoken to Anna in months. We exchange messages about the children, logistics, school schedules, nothing that invites reflection. That is not cruelty. It is containment. Love creates openings. The land knows how to use them. I see my children, rarely, always away from here. Neutral spaces, restaurants, parks, places with noise, and witnesses. They do not ask why I cannot come home. They have learned not to. That knowledge is its own inheritance. The elders visit less now. When they do, it is to confirm rather than instruct. They bring food. They sit quietly. Sometimes they tell stories that sound unrelated. They are not. One of them told me recently that watches are not chosen for strength. They are chosen for endurance, the ability to remain without resolution. That is harder than bravery. The outside pressure never stopped. It only learned to disguise itself. Last spring, a proposal surfaced quietly. Environmental monitoring expansion, climate research. The language changed, but the intent did not. They wanted proximity, access, data. I denied it. That denial did not escalate into conflict. It simply disappeared. Requests rerouted, emails unanswered. The system learned what individuals had already learned. Some questions should not be pursued from too close. There was one incident in late summer that tested the boundary in a way I had not seen before. A child wandered, not lost, not defiant, curious. He was tribal, young, too young to understand the signs. He slipped away from a family gathering and walked toward the ridge, while adults argued about something small and human. I saw him from the outpost. That distance matters. I did not move. Movement invites escalation. I keyed the radio and called his name once. That was a violation. I knew it the moment I did it. He stopped. He turned. He looked directly at me. Behind him, the ground was wrong. Not open, not altered, attentive. I raised my hand. Slow, open palm. A signal, older than language. He hesitated. Then he walked back, the way he came. The land did not respond. That moment cost me something I cannot measure. I felt the attention settle on me, more heavily afterward, as if the land took note of the exception. Rules that bend mock you. That night, I dreamed of my grandmother. Again, she did not speak. She stood beside the wash and looked at the place where the tracks end. When I woke, I understood that my role was not to save people. It was to make exceptions rare. The following weeks were quiet. That kind of quiet that does not soothe. It waits. In October, the first snow fell early again. Patterns repeating are never coincidence here. I began receiving reports. Indirectly, not official channels. Stories passed quietly between districts, ranges in other regions, describing ended tracks. Sudden silence. Voices that imitate authority rather than affection. They did not ask for guidance. They asked how long it took to accept. That question tells you everything. I responded carefully. I told them to slow down, to observe before acting, to listen to elders if they had them, to remember that containment is not control. Some listened, some did not. The land does not punish ignorance. It teaches through consequence. I have stopped counting losses Counting implies closure. There is none. I maintain the rules, hey, as best I can. They are simple. When spoken plainly, do not go alone. Where sound disappears, do not answer voices that know your name. Do not cross. Where tracks end, do not assume. Silence means safety. Do not bring the unprepared close. Do not make offerings without understanding what you are offering. One rule remains incomplete. It always will. If you believe you are being called by someone you love, leave the area immediately without acknowledging it. Do not test yourself. Do not prove strength. Love is not protection, hey. I learned that too late. There are nights when I consider leaving, not because I want to, because I wonder if staying creates its own gravity. A fixed point can draw as much as it holds. Then I remember what happened when the watching lapsed, even briefly, how quickly the land adjusted, how many people paid for that gap. I stay. The land does not thank me. It does not need to. It allows equilibrium. That is all it has ever offered. I'm not a guardian in the way people imagine. There is no defense, no barrier, no victory condition. I am a witness. Witnesses do not change outcomes. They limit spread. They preserve memory. They ensure rules are passed accurately. That is why this confession exists, not to warn you away from a place. Places change. Boundaries move. To warn you about behavior. If you find yourself somewhere the land goes quiet without reason, stop. If tracks end where they should continue, turn back. If a voice calls you from a place that does not echo, do not answer. If you think rules exist to protect you, you are wrong. Rules exist to protect what remains. When you are gone, the land was not made for us. It allows us, conditionally. I am still hay, because someone must be. And when I am not, the land will still be waiting.